Hi everyone, Ashley here and welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be sharing how to make this fun male-themed slimline card featuring a whole bunch of lawn fawn images, including these adorable owls that are carrying mail. And the background features some soft ink blending and lots of splatter. So without further ado, let's get into the card making. So I'm starting by blending the background, and for this I've die cut a piece of white blending cardstock with a slimline rectangle die. And I've done that twice actually, and on the second one I used a grassy border die to cut that grassy edge. And because my grassy border die is actually meant for smaller cards, it wasn't quite long enough, but all I did was sort of line it up the second time with the piece I had already cut and sort of just cut it again. So it didn't quite meet up exactly, but then I just used my scissors to kind of cut in between the two cuts and cut them together. And you don't really notice it because it's sort of a jagged edge anyways because of the grass. So if you ever do need to use a smaller grassy border die for a longer piece of cardstock, you can totally do that. For the background, I wanted it to look like the sky, and I used a combination of antique linen, being the yellow distress oxide ink, and tumbled glass being the blue, and just blended them on with my blending brushes in a horizontal pattern, just one after the other, and tried to blend them together a little bit, although they don't blend super smoothly, and I was okay with that. I was okay with kind of having that division of color. And I liked that yellow at the horizon line because to me it kind of looks like a sunrise or even like a sunset with sort of that sunshine coming in through the horizon. So that's kind of what I was thinking when I used yellow in the skyline there. For the grassy piece, I'm using bundled sage distress oxide ink and just blending that on from the bottom up to the top and letting it kind of fade off. So I didn't care to really blend the tops of the grass with the ink too harshly. I let it kind of fade off into white, and I did that for the sky here as well, and I think that's just something nice to do when you want to keep your inked panel fairly light and pastel colored. You can let it fade off into white, and it just kind of adds like a nice sort of light-handed effect, I think. So for this splatter, I'm just using some sparkle for the sky and some brown watercolor for the grass, which I thought would be nice because it's meant to be the ground, so it kind of makes sense that there's like brown splatter, like kind of as if it's like dirt. Now I'm stamping out a bunch of the images I'm planning to use for the card, and for this I used a bunch of owls from the mini Lawn Fawn stamp set, so Owlsome, and then the bigger owl from the special delivery set, along with a whole bunch of notes and little envelopes and things as little accessory images. And I'm going to stamp these out onto some Neenah Solar White paper with My Favorite Things Extreme Black ink. And I'm using this combination because it's a good paper and ink for Copic coloring. And I'm just stamping them out twice with my mini Misty tool to get a really nice crisp black line. I also off camera went ahead and stamped out a few more images from the special delivery box add-on set from Lawn Fawn, and those are those box and sort of wrapping images up at the top along with the hearts. And this is just because I wanted to include them on the card, so I stamped them out as well. So next I can get started on the Copic coloring, and I'm starting with the owls, and I'm sort of testing out my color combination on this bigger owl here. And I used a combination of yellow-red, so YR markers, sort of like orange peachy tones, and I wanted to keep it fairly light, so for the top of the owl and the wings, I used, I believe, YR04 and YR02. And then for the owl's midsection or body, I used, I believe, YR00 or just a very light yellow or yellow-red marker. And I just outlined, so I left the main body of the owl white. And again, this is sort of just to keep everything very light and pastel colored and just a very light tone. So once I had kind of figured out the color combination that I wanted to use on the big owl and I kind of decided that I thought it looked good, I went ahead and used that same color combination on the three smaller owls. And again, I'm just using a couple light YR shades for the main part of the sort of top, the top and back of the owl. And then for the front body of the owl, I'm just using one lighter yellow-red shade. And then for the beak and feet, I used a light yellow shade and a medium shade as well. So I'm just continuing to color these in. And I was inspired to make this owl-themed card because I actually already had the special delivery stamp set with that bigger owl in my stash, but as a surprise present, my husband got me the So Owlsome stamp set as well. So then I had these three extra little owls, which I thought would go really well thematically with that bigger owl that I already had in my collection. So I knew that I wanted to make a card with all four owls together. So that's really where this card came from. I was just inspired by my new stamp set and kind of thinking of a fun way to use it and match it with some of the other supplies that I already have. And I think the idea of the owls being the mail deliverers are very cute. as well. Kind of gives me like Harry Potter vibes. For some of the images, if I notice that the stamping wasn't 100% perfect, I do come in with my Copic multi-liner, which is just a thin black marker that really works well with Copic markers because it's the same brand, obviously. So it's meant to kind of go with Copic markers and act as an outliner, and it doesn't bleed or anything when you kind of touch it together with the Copic markers. So that's why I like to use it for touching up images like this. I use the 0.5 thickness, which I find is a really good thickness for sort of this type of stamp and this style of stamp, I guess. I do find Lawn Fawn stamps, the lines on them are, I guess, like a very specific thickness that is sort of standard with all their stamps, and I do find that the 0.5 thickness of Copic multiliner matches that really well. I guess because my black ink pad is going a little bit dry, I think I've had it for quite a while and it probably needs a replacement, so I am finding in some of my cards these days that I'm having to sort of fix up the stamping with a marker a little bit. And it's definitely a very easy thing to do. It's not hard, so if you're finding that your ink pad's starting to get a bit dry, that's definitely something you can do to kind of spruce up your images, you know, until you end up getting that replacement ink pad or ink replacement. Okay, so I've gone ahead and started coloring some of the other images as well, and I tried to keep the color scheme fairly simple for this. Obviously, I used some brown tones for the box, 2 boxes. I used just light blues to highlight the paper, light yellows to highlight the envelopes, and for the other accents, I used a combination of red and blue. So for the mail hat, I used red and then filled in the strap with blue, and for the little hearts on the envelopes, I used red. For the hearts coming out of the box, I used red, and as you'll see for the gift wrapping, I will use again like a combination of red and blue. And this is something I've been trying to do on some more of my cards lately, where I kind of try to keep a consistent color story. In the past, I've kind of just used whatever random colors I feel like, which is fun, and it does look nice. Like it makes bright cards, but I'm trying to see if I can stick to like a specific color theme and like see if that, you know, looks good for me. So that's what I was trying to do with this card. Okay, so I'm die cutting out the word love using a Scripty word die from Lawn Fawn, and I just blended some bundled sage distress oxide ink onto a panel, and I'm going to cut that out with the word die. And that was just so it matched the ink blending I had already done. For the rest of the sentiment, I knew I just wanted it on a thin white strip, so I just took a white strip of cardstock and stamped out "Owl You Need Is" in an orange color distress ink. And I will kind of put that onto the card with the word love coming right after. Now, to make this background, what I did is I took a piece of patterned paper that has embossed stripes. And the way this is meant to work is that you blend ink onto it and then rub it off, and any ink that got onto the embossing will rub right off, and you can see that happening now when I'm rubbing it with this paper towel. Now, I had this paper on hand, but you could easily make this paper if you have like a stencil with the stripes, because you could just apply some embossing powder and heat set it through the stencil and you would get that same pattern. I'm pretty sure that's how this paper was made, is using that type of technique. So you could definitely just do this on your own as well. Or you could just stencil some red ink directly through a stencil as well, which would provide the same effect. But I already had that paper on hand, so that's what I decided to use. Okay, so I did go ahead and glue that background striped piece onto a Slimline card base. And for this word love, I'm just adding some sparkle to it with a Wink of Stella glitter brush pen, and I just find that's a really nice sort of accent to do for these word die cuts. To build the rest of the card, I'm gluing the sky panel down onto the background, and then I'm gluing the grass panel right on top of that sky. And of course, these have had a lot of time to dry because they were drying the whole time I was doing my coloring. For the rest of the images, I kind of just arranged them in a way that I thought looked nice, and I've set them up here, but I haven't adhered anything down yet. And now what I'm doing is just going through one by one and adhering everything down with some liquid glue or foam squares. I use a combination. So for the sentiment banner and the word die, I'm using some liquid glue and just sticking it straight down. And for a lot of the other images, I'll do the same, mostly sort of the background type images like the flowers and things. And then for the images that I want to stand out, like the owls or the boxes, I am going to pop those up onto some foam squares just to give them a bit of extra dimension. You'll see some images here that I didn't actually stamp in color in this video, these little flowers and pieces of grass, and that's because I had these on hand from a previous card where I had colored them and cut them and I didn't use them. So I definitely keep all of my scraps of previously colored and cut images on hand, and sometimes if I feel like I need a bit of filler for a card, I'll go to my stash and see what I have on hand and see if it would work. And I thought that these little dandelion flowers looked really nice in the background of this card, so I just threw them right in. Okay, so I've skipped ahead and I've really just already gone through and adhered all of these little images down using, like I mentioned, a combination of glue and foam squares. And at the last minute, I decided to add a couple ants that, again, I just had in that old stash of unused images because I thought that they would fill in that space really cutely as well. So that is it. That is the card for today. I thought it had enough sort of sparkle in the background that I didn't need to add any extra embellishments, and I think it came out really cute. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed watching the card making process. If you want to see more of my videos, definitely head back to my YouTube homepage and you'll see all of my other card making videos there. To see more of my cards, make sure to head over to my Instagram account, which is linked down in the video description below, where I post even more cards than I do here at YouTube. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!